We would be honored if you would.
All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Dungeon Crawlers where, I'm just going to say it. The guests matter and the script doesn't. We're just throwing it out. We're just going to wing it. That's right. We're winging it with Willow Becker and Mike Clough that have started an amazing publishing company. They also have a Kickstarter out there. And there's a bunch of stuff we're going to talk about. I can't remember all of it just because it's so much. And if I tried to explain it all, my brain might explode, much like that one movie with
brain scanners.
No,
something with a brain and a scanner.
Had, like Samuel L. Jackson and Colin Firth and that other guy that played Elton John. Kingsman.
Oh, the Kingsman.
That's the movie. Kingsman. That's
yeah.
At the very end, where everyone's brain just goes.
Spoilers! I haven't seen it.
Wow.
If you haven't seen that, that's too bad. It's like what 3 or 4 years ago.
Honestly, that was probably my favorite Samuel L. Jackson movie.
Yeah.
Samuel L. Jackson with a lisp.
Yep.
Yeah, when his reaction when he kills somebody.
Yeah, and he starts to vomit.
It's the best thing ever.
No, fantastic, crazy movie. But anyways, so let's talk about stuff. Where do we start? Who wants to throw out the questions? Because Alton or Krebs, you guys want to throw out a question and we'll just start going.
Yeah, I'll jump right in. And one more just quick heads up to our audience out there. You may have noticed that we have not yet responded to questions that we have asked you in the last 2 episodes. Please jump onto the Discord server and post some responses if you have not yet, because next week we're going to be answering a number of things as we take on new and exciting adventures. But as for tonight's subject, we are particularly excited to have our guests on because the folks over at Weird Little Worlds, right? Okay.
That's right.
Publishing company. Thank you. I always doubt myself as soon as I start to talk about somebody else's thing. Fantastic little publishing group. We're very excited for them. They've recently launched a Kickstarter that is still going on right now. Check it out in the description. Go and back it. It's already fully funded, so you'll be able to get all kinds of cool rewards.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Look at that.
Hi.
Someone just jumped on and got something else. That's why his phone's ringing.
Go hit those stretch goals, people.
That's right.
So I do want to make sure to give you just a moment to talk about the Kickstarter, what you're trying to accomplish, and what some of the exciting rewards that our fabulous fans can enjoy. Heather, or excuse me, Willow, do you have any questions? Any input?
Whatever
I'm sorry.
your name is, just go.
Don't
you get a new name.
You know what? We'll
Every
fix this
time.
in post. We'll fix this in post. We've got crack editors.
That's fine.
Editors
I'll respond to basically anything.
I work.
Hey, you girl face, please talk. Yeah, we're super excited about this anthology we're putting out. A brainchild that Mike and I'll kind of put together. I had been pitching out for a while before I kind of connected with him, and then we got together and we were talking about kind of what we wanted to do. And I have a really strong background in horror, and I'm been a part of the horror community for a long time, and so I thought, there is nothing that I want more than to make a horror anthology that is just awesome and scary but fun, that you read it and you don't feel terrible when you're finished, and also something that I'm not worried about my 13-year-old finding and reading when I'm not around. So that's kind of our goal. Is there's a lot of horror out there that is trying to kind of push the limits of grotesquerie and what can I get away with, and we really wanted to make something that was scary and fun, that reminded us of scary stories to tell in the dark, that kind of creepy. It's definitely scary and it creeps you out, but you also are it's you can go to sleep at night for the most part, right?
I absolutely love it. And if you have not already clicked away to the Kickstarter, and we give you permission right now to pause and do so, feel free to come back. But I'm particularly enthralled by the name of this anthology. Humans are the problem. Totally agree, especially with the kind of year that we've had. We see, in fact, that oftentimes the monster is already within us. But I'm kind of curious, like what's kind of background to maybe choosing that title specifically? You know, you
So-
mentioned trying to humanize some of these horror stories.
So it's sort of interesting how when we came up with this title, I'm a fan of having a bit of a gimmick for our theme. I've done that in past project. And Willow came up with the idea we needed to talk about how monsters are being pushed out from their habitats and the world. They're having to adapt to the world. You know, there's urbanization and population, human population, and it's just, how's that impacting the monsters? Is it, and you know, Willow took it even to another further step of saying, hey, you know, people are always on their phones. They don't even notice them when the monster's like creeping up behind them, and then like the monster jumps out and the people are like, oh, you know, on their phone. So we were trying to find a name. Really, I mean, we were coming up with all kinds of different things and all kinds of catchy things. And she's like, Mike, humans are the problem. And she's like, I was like, yeah, they are. And she's like, no, that's the title. And I was like, yeah, it is. So that's where it came from. And so, and humans are the problem. A monsters anthology. So really, the stories are supposed to inspire monsters to get their scary back. You know, so they, you know, it's a pick me up. It's like chicken soup for the teenage soul, but instead it's like human broth for the monster's soullessness, I guess. So yeah, that's where it came from.
I absolutely love it. And I don't want to take too much time without passing on to Dan or Krebs to ask some questions as well. But one of the other things that particularly stood out to me about your Kickstarter is the way that you've segmented your funding, and in particular that you are paying your authors, you know, professional wages instead of just pennies and dimes and just trying to get them to submit something in. What's kind of the motivation for you behind utilizing Kickstarter as a platform? What are you trying to achieve?
I think that's like, honestly, that's really where Mike and I think where we really connected. So a little background for you. Mike actually, and you guys probably know this, but Mike worked at this company before here called Fiction Vortex. And I am totally going to tell your story, Mike. Sorry.
I told you a story about coming up with the title, so it's
sorry.
it's fair game.
So he worked at this Fiction Vortex and he ran this Kickstarter campaign, and I was so impressed by it. Not just that it was really that he did a really good job marketing it. I come from a really strong marketing background. That's what I do for a living, is I do marketing. And so I loved his marketing. I thought he did a great job. And then I also loved the fact that he was paying his people an appropriate wage. And I was like, this is a big deal. Like, there are a lot of Kickstarters where people are still paying, you know, under wage, like 1 cent a word, 3 cents a word. And as writers, both Mike and I are writers. That's what we, you know, that's why we're doing this. We have a really strong respect for people's time. We want stories that are worth the money that we're going to pay for them. Like, we want professional stories. We want more than professional stories. And so we built into the Kickstarter that we'd start at the HWA, the Horror Writers Association professional wage, which is 5 cents a word. And then we would move it forward. Like, our goal is, you know, once we hit all of our stretch goals, we make it all the way to $20,000, then we'll be able to pay 8 cents a word, which is the science fiction writers of, oh my gosh,
Fifth one.
Yeah. Anyway, Science Fiction Writers of America's, their professional wage. So the goal is to make it all the way up to 8 and get the very best stories. And right now, we already have some of the most amazing authors that are in this anthology. They're just really just some of the most exciting and innovative horror writers that are around right now. It's really, really exciting.
I absolutely love it. You've got to support your artists if you want good art. You know, even though the muse may feed the soul, patrons feed the artists, right?
Yeah, for real.
So, and I know Dan definitely is going to have some thoughts on this.
Well, I was just going to say, and I think one of the authors you have is Michael Brent Collings, which
Yes,
I've on the show multiple times. He's a good friend, and he's probably one of the only horror writers that I've read that I literally am terrified to walk through my own home with the lights out after reading his stories. So I can watch a horror movie, no problem, but I read one of his books and it's like I'm a small child that has to have every light on as I move from my living room to my bedroom. Yeah, it's terrifying.
Yeah, seriously, he's brilliant. We have such a great cast. Like, I keep thinking of it like that, but there's such a great cast, roster of authors, people these are people who are like, it's been so cool doing this because I have been writing horror and reading horror my entire life. Like from the time I was 11, when I first stole my first Stephen King novel, I have been reading horror secretly where people couldn't find me my entire life. And so when I kind of branched out and got involved in the community, I started picking up all of these favorites. And I literally, when we were putting together the jacket of this book, I wrote my 10 favorite authors and I put that on the mock-up of the cover. And at this point, we have 8 out of my 10.
That's awesome.
And we're talking to we're talking to the other ones. So it's just really, really phenomenal. It actually feels really miraculous that it's almost as if, I don't know, it's been a really, really interesting experience, almost as if there are, you know, forces at work that really want this thing to happen. And I've just been really surprised.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So before I jump to my questions, so what was the first Stephen King novel you read?
Oh, good question. That was Pet Sematary.
Oh.
The scariest, I think, Stephen King novel ever written.
It's good, but not.
Oh man, okay. Well,
So
I'm open to suggestions.
Let's
I'll
ask that
fight
question
you.
then. Like, what's the thing that really gets you about that story?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, I love all of it, but from reading it as an 11-year-old, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of parts about that book that are really terrifying. The idea of loss, of course, loss is really terrifying. The sex was really terrifying. All of the sex in the book is terrifying. And so, and there's not a lot of it, but all of those parts were like seared into my brain. But I think that the scariest part of it is that you take something, like you're trying to do a good thing, and even it doesn't matter how good your intention is if the ground is bad, right? So like there's this kind of deep truth that it doesn't matter what your intention is, if you're burying it in bad, tainted ground, it's bad and it's going to destroy your life. So there's like that deep kind of truth level that I just really love. And of course, I think the ending scene is just phenomenal. I just think the end is just great.
Yeah, Cujo was terrifying for me.
Oh, really? That's so funny because I just dogs don't freak me out.
You know, I love dogs, and for a dog to go rabid and want to attack and kill me, yeah, that was terrifying.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
It's okay.
I mean, I get it. I think honestly, I'm a huge Stephen King fan, like everybody else who's ever really loved horror. And I love Pet Sematary. I think it's terrifying, but I really like some of his work that's not horror a lot. I love The Long Walk is one of my favorite books. And if you have not read that one, that's a really good.
Yeah, even his Richard Bachman stuff is pretty.
Yeah,
good.
that's a Bachman book. It's really, really good. But there are so many other horror authors. That's the thing. Like we all get kind of entrenched because we've all read it, right? You've always seen it. But the authors that we have right now, these are like the new voices, and like seriously, people like Gabino Iglesias, who is just brilliant. He put out, his book is called Coyote Songs, and he's amazing. And Philip Fracassi, who is also just a terrifying writer. And then I can't say my favorite, but I love Gemma Files. I think she is such a fantastic storyteller. And of course, we have like Lisa Morton, who is a 6-time Bram Stoker Award winner. And we have Sarah Reed, who is just got the most lovely prose, but it's also just so unsettling. And John Langan. Oh my gosh, you guys. Anyway, I keep talking about people who maybe you don't know, but these people are really amazing writers. They're just so, so good. John Langan wrote The Fisherman, who he won the Bram Stoker Award, I think in 2019. For The Fisherman, and it's just phenomenal. It's this great fisherman's tale, and there's just all of these stories within stories. It's called frame narrative, and so there's all these frame narratives, right? A guy's telling a story to a guy who told him a story about this guy who told a story about this guy that saw this thing, and it's just so awesome. Wow. It's so great.
The legs on this project are super amazing. I'm so excited for this.
Seriously. Like there is so much like good mojo. Oh, there's so much good mojo on it. I'm just super surprised. And there are things that I can't talk to you about this project because they're not solidified yet, but we have other things coming, people coming on the project that are going to blow, it's just going to blow your mind. It's just a huge, huge project.
And now we're back to the beginning of the episode where I said my head's going to explode. So no, it's great. It sounds like a terrific project. It sounds like you've got a great bunch of writers for this project. And as Alton said earlier, it's fantastic that you're actually paying your writers a good wage. I mean, as a writer, you put all this blood, sweat, tears, a part of your soul, it seems like, into your work, and then you hand it off, hoping people will like it and that you'll get credit for it. And there's some places out there you wait forever and nothing trickles in and you're like, what the heck? And so it is nice to get something, get paid for that and know that, hey, okay, people are valuing my work and what I've done. So that's fantastic that you guys are doing that.
Yeah. That's actually a big tenet of our press in general. It's not just going to be for this project alone. It's something that we want to carry through. Because we know that as we do that, it's a good thing that we're putting out and good things will come back. And we hope it comes back in the quality of the stories that we can tell and enabling us to have even more, not necessarily influence in the reading community, but influence in the fact that we can help more authors out and make it more successful. Yeah, I mean, we want to be successful in it ourselves, but we also want to make sure that everybody that's on the team with us has that success too, and make it a great experience for everybody, not just for somebody that's sitting in the office typing away these Kickstarter campaigns and stuff like that. We want to make it's a team effort.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, even though you guys are doing kind of the hard, heavy lifting as the publishing company, these writers you wouldn't be able to do it without them. They're kind of the founding stones.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really funny. I was thinking about that today about Mike. It has this thing where he sets up a Facebook group, a private group for all of our authors. And I was thinking how cool that is because writing is so isolating. It's such an isolating task. You do it inside of your own head. You do it inside of your own office where there's no one around. And I think horror is even more isolating. I think there's a tendency for horror writers to be even more kind of caged, about what it is they're doing. And it's not everybody, but I think that for me, there's a little bit of like, why am I doing this? Like, I should be writing fairy tales, I should be writing nice stories, but I don't. I just don't do that. I write stories that creep me out, and I like doing that, But I think that it's cool to have a project like this and a company like this where we really do want people to be able to collaborate and talk to each other and connect with each other if they want to, and that's a really cool thing for people who don't always get to collaborate, and hopefully that's something that we kind of move forward with. I just think that it's wonderful to be able to talk with people who are at your same level and connect if you want to.
Yeah, no, I know Michael Brent's been on the show many times, and he's related stories where his in-laws have come to his wife and said, "Are you okay? Are you really okay?" Yeah, because they've read his books and stuff like that, and he jokes about it all the time. But I mean, there is kind of that awkwardness because you're right. Horror writers are writing some really creepy. I mean, even when I was writing my second book, and it's urban fantasy, and I'm looking up how to poison people and how people react to certain poisons. And I wrote out that whole scene, and I'm like, that was really cool, but there's no way I'd ever want to do that in real life. And I'm sure whoever, is monitoring my Google search is like, should we be worried about this guy? And I can only imagine some of the Google searches that you do writing horror, but but it is fun. I do like when we're collaborating. I know when we do the show and we're talking, I mean, I'm the writer. Krebs is pretty much, he's the film major guy, and Alton's the game master. Even though we're all from kind of a different section, when we collaborate together, we come up with some really amazing ideas. And even if it's just horror writers and fantasy writers just in the same room talking, sometimes some really amazing ideas can boil out of that.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that's really one of the things that ties us together, is that love of story and being able to see all of these threads going through the world and pull them together into a cohesive little place. And it's just such a fun thing, especially as we work with other storytellers and professionals that are out there doing the thing. To be able to be a thread in that tapestry is so much fun. So definitely be checking out the Kickstarter, guys.
I agree.
Yes. We'll go to Krebs.
And I have, every time we have authors on the show, there are certain questions I have to ask, because I find these threads of thought to be absolutely fascinating. And so this isn't necessarily about the Kickstarter itself or the anthology that's forthcoming, that sort of thing, which I think, by the way, congratulations on that big to do. That is so awesome.
Especially
but you have both. Go ahead.
I was saying, especially that they did what, in 2 days? You funded in 2 days?
Yeah, funded in like 2 days, which is fantastic. So yes, I'm definitely going to creep in on those stretch goals myself. So now Willow and Mike, you're both published authors at this point. Is that correct?
I have a couple short stories out there. I don't have anything.
That counts.
That counts.
It's
That
published.
counts.
It counts.
And you
And-
wrote it, it's published.
And
That's right.
In my past life, Willow mentioned Friction Vortex. That company focused strongly on the sort of the multiverse collaboration aspect, because like Alton was saying, the connecting threads and being in the same world with other people and connecting it and developing it. That's my jam. I can do that all day. Like one point in time before that company, Fiction Vortex, went down, we actually had 5 or 6 different episodes of a podcast called World Building Podcast, or World Building Sessions. And so it was just, World BS is what we called it. So that's my thing. I love that getting in and developing worlds. And that's what we did in that company. We had what was called story verses, and that was everybody was writing their own series within a shared story world. And it's so fun just to hash out worlds with other people. I mean, I guess it's my version of tabletop gaming, is trying to sit down and just really develop a world with other people. But yeah, just to go back to, I have a few stories out there, and then a few episodes of a we did everything in episodic fiction, a few episodes of a series I was writing out there.
Excellent. So the questions that I like to ask of authors when they come on the show, one of them is, did you have that moment in any of your stories? Doesn't matter which one it is. Did you have that moment where you found that you were writing something and you didn't want the story, you like emotionally, you didn't want the story to go that way, but you knew it had to go that way? Have you ever written something where you're like, this is the story that needs to be told, even though I hate everything I'm doing right now to this character?
So I have a story, and it's one of those episodes I was talking about. In the story, there's giant spiders attacking people and things like that happen. But the story starts off in this space colony, and this little boy's over at his neighbor's house because his mom and dad are busy. The mom's having a baby, and so they're going to bed, and he's sharing the room with this other family's little boy, who's like a year old. And giant spiders attack and just basically kill everybody off but the boy that's staying with that family. And I wrote that story, and I'm like, if the family dies, that means the baby died. And at that time, my second son was just around that same age. And I'm like, why am I writing this? And it was really hard. And I've talked about this in some panels before, but I couldn't write the actual scene of the little boy, the little baby dying. I just couldn't. So I had basically the floor falls out from underneath the house, and when the dad comes to rescue his son, the dad from the other house comes to rescue his son. He looks down. There's just the baby's bed. And it's empty, and that's where I leave the scene. It's just the empty bed, and it was really hard. I don't think I could ever write anything like that again, nor would I want to. But yeah, so that's one example of sometimes writing makes you do weird things and it takes you places where you don't want to go. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that.
Well, father to father, I can tell you that was a very brave move. Like that would be a very difficult thing. Sorsha, what about you? What's the most difficult thing that you've had to write, even though
Sorsha?
even though
Sure, Willow.
Oh,
by the way, I'm glad you guys caught on to that. No. Earlier Alton got it called Willow Heather.
What?
I
No.
I
am
love that you
now-
called me Sorsha. Like I am so flattered. Like
don't worry. I'm
Val
gonna call you
Kilmer,
by
I
a
really
different-
appreciate that a lot.
You're referring to these events, but
Mardigan.
there's just no record of. There's no way anybody
There's no
could
way.
ever know.
No
that
way.
At this
that
point,
happened.
I'm leaving it all in. It's
Yeah,
not
so-
getting edited
Nothing's
out.
getting edited out. No, I want you
So-
to know, just as a heads up, I'm gonna call you by a different female name from the film Willow for the rest of the show.
Great. I hope you can think of one because
I've got a
really-
list. I've got a
So-
list.
Okay, all right.
I don't think you understand the severity of your situation now, Willow.
I'm
I think-
so excited. Like I literally, I just think that that's just the nicest name anyone's ever accidentally called me.
That's funny. I've known Willow for we've been working on this for a year or so. And Willow is actually, the movie Willow is actually my favorite movie of all time.
What?
That's
Nice.
another episode.
I didn't know that.
And that's the funny thing, because every time I hop on, I'm like, Willow, I didn't know she was going to get quoted that stuff all the time, or people would bug her about it. So, anytime something happens, pops up in my head when we're talking, like I'm like, Willow, you idiot, stuff like that. So,
My entire life, actually.
Yes,
You're
your
the first
entire
person who's ever done that.
I know we're on a thread here, but let's just run with it for a second. So I saw Willow in theaters when it was brand new.
Yep, so did I.
okay. I remember seeing it at my parents' house. We just recently got a VHS. I was living in Texas. It came out in what, 1980? Was it 82?
It was 88.
Had to be 88.
88.
It was
Okay.
88.
No, I saw it in the theater then. We would have seen it in the theater then. And I loved it. I hated the trolls. I just couldn't stand the trolls.
Those trolls were awesome and scary.
Yeah, then they turned into that Hydra.
You could
And
smell
that's
them.
The thing. It
That's the
turned into
weird
the
thing.
people with heads. That was the
Oh,
most disgusting
spoilers,
thing
guys.
ever. And then the tendrils ripped the skin off, and I'm like, and my parents are like, yeah.
Yes.
And then you became a horror writer. Yeah.
Oh my
Well,
gosh,
that's-
I got stories up in there about that. Yeah, I was severely emotionally damaged as a very young child.
Nice. Keep going.
Yeah. So I like, seriously, I have thought a lot about this, but I had a number of, I think that in order to become a horror writer, you either have to have an incredibly traumatic event as a child, or a very bad babysitter, or
I have
both.
12 sisters.
Yeah. And I actually had a series of very bad babysitters.
Yipes.
So I think I watched Poltergeist when I was 3.
Yes,
And
you and me
I
both,
saw-
kid.
Oh yeah, and then I saw Evil Dead when I was 4.
Oh, even better! I love
No.
you.
I mean, like,
Not
it-
when you're 4.
It messed me up in such a huge, massive way. I think that the only things I could possibly have done were become like I don't know, a nun or a horror writer. Like, you had to kind of pick, like, you're either gonna go, I gotta get away from this as quickly as possible, or I just gonna dig right into it. And what I did is, I was so scared. I recall I was 4 years old and we lived in this trailer. And at nighttime, the trailer would do this weird thing where the wind would hit the screen. Have you ever had this happen?
Oh, yeah.
The wind will hit the screen.
Yep.
The wind will hit the screen and it'll go, ooh, like it's super scary.
Yep.
And so when you're 4, I was like, oh, there's definitely ghosts. They're definitely here. And so what I would do is I would stay in my bed and I would be paralyzed with fear. And I would be like, Ghosts, I am your friend. I am on your side. You should not kill me. I love ghosts. And that is what I did.
And now,
I might have brainwashed myself, actually.
yeah, no, you chose your team. It was a clear
did. I
choice. It wasn't
Picked my
brainwashing.
team. Yeah, that was the team I picked.
All right, so
But yeah,
there's rumors that Bruce Campbell's going to show up as Ash in the new Doctor Strange
yes,
movie.
there are. I've seen those.
Yeah.
I heard about that. I actually met his wife.
Bruce Campbell?
I went to his house. It was really nice.
He actually leaned on my shoulder and got into a fake fight with Michael Rosenbaum in front of me in the middle of an interview. That was kind of fun.
You win.
yeah,
That's
anytime Dan accidentally cuddles with a celebrity, he wins.
I
Yeah.
know. Oh,
Absolutely.
And the guy that played Howard from Big Bang Theory sat in the golf cart. It was at Comic-Con. It
Oh
was
my
awesome.
gosh, is this
Cool.
like a setup for like an epic joke?
I seriously, we have the YouTube video. But it sounds like one, doesn't it?
Bruce Campbell and Mike Rosenbaum get into a fight in a bar.
And Howard sits at a golf cart.
I don't have a punchline for that yet. I have to work on that. I have to work. I'll have
Something
to
about
develop that
balls,
one.
I assume.
It's
That's when Raj comes in and gives the punchline, except he can't because there's a girl in the room.
Oh, right. There you go.
That's
Or
right.
it's Sheldon.
So back to you, Bev Morta. So I'm really curious, like, when did you, okay, so that moment when you had your first cathartic moment writing horror, you told us about reading horror in your youth. What about your first cathartic moment writing horror? When was that first, like, ultimate high?
Oh my gosh, that's a really hard question.
Yeah.
I have to think because I've been writing stories for a really long time. And it probably goes back to like when I was really young. Because I started writing when I was picked out as a grade schooler. I was a gifted and talented kid. And so I was picked out and put into like fast tracked. I did a bunch of writing in my fast track classes. And so I won this contest when I was young. And I would have to say that's probably the answer. It's not horror though. So I have to move forward. I'm going to go forward. I'm actually answer the real question, which is the first time that's happened when I was writing horror. And I wrote a story, called Cashmere actually, about a woman who is, she's a drug addict and she lives on the street and she gets approached. So she's living with this dude and they live under like a bridge and she gets approached by this guy in a trench coat and he's like, I'll pay you $100 if you drown the guy you're with. And so that's the story.
The more you know.
Before you know.
Yeah. And she's like, well, it's $100. So yeah, so that's the story. I can't, it's not been published. For various reasons I kept it, but the end of the story is very cathartic for me because it's a really story about a transition. It's about hope and it's about making choices, right? So she has no money. She's dying clearly of her abuse and her addiction. She gets this opportunity to take this money and she realizes that this is kind of her way out. Like she could possibly, try to start again. And so there was a lot of catharsis there because at the end of that story, you realize that she really has this entire life that when at the first blush, you can only see her addiction. You can only see all of the flaw in her. But as you move through the story, you realize that she's a mom, that she's a daughter, that she's a human, that she's kind of lost her humanity. And in the process of the story, she regains some of that humanity. And that's the kind of story that I really love in horror is, as I don't love horror that's just kind of schlocky. It always needs to have kind of a bigger reason. Like there needs to be something more for me. I want to have like an experience. So I think that was the first time as I realized that I was really writing myself. I was writing a redemption story for my own self, for the parts of me that I felt were irredeemable. And I don't know, people sometimes don't like that in a horror story, but I don't hate it.
No, that's
I
beautiful.
Yeah, and I'm deeply glad that it has a cathartic ending and a cathartic meaning to you. I did not, in fact, mean to dehumanize you by forgetting your name, and I'm glad that it was a cathartic thing and not just like I killed a guy who, I might be that guy under the bridge one day. Hopefully not. I just want to apologize.
You never know. Your next story may include a guy named Alton.
That's right. I will.
Maybe we need to make that the pledge, drown Alton under the bridge pledge.
So here's this thing. I'm thinking about doing some limited run merch.
What does it say?
Oh, it's reversing the screen.
Not on our end. No, it's not. It's only on your
Reminder,
end.
Willow is not in fact Heather.
It's hilarious, Alton. I want you to go ahead.
It's a t-shirt that says reminder, Willow is not in fact Heather.
True.
So
know what we need to do? And then on the back, you need to list every name that Krebs called it.
Exactly, with the DCR logo at the top. I think it'd be hot. And it's a deep cut for the fans.
Yeah. I feel like I want you to know that you are definitely not the first person who's called me Heather. And of the names that I get called, Heather is the number 1. And then Laurel is number 2 because they're both plants. And they both, I don't know. They're both plants. I don't know why people call me Heather and Laurel, but they do.
There's nothing more amazing than the smell of Scottish Heather. So, hey.
There you go. And I want you to know that I will never do that to you.
Nope.
Not that.
Two of the 3 hosts have more class. The third one just cracks jokes.
I love it.
That's right.
Call me whatever. You probably should call me Pig Beast next. I just can't think of another woman.
Oh, there's more.
No. I have a few more up my sleeve. Don't you worry about it.
Go ahead, Krebs.
Not a problem.
I do know a couple more. Sorry,
I know you know. Don't worry. You're gonna hear these. I've got this. All right. So this next question goes to Mike, though. I would like to ask the question of what do you find to be truly scary? This is something that Kaya brought up a moment ago when she was saying how most horror is extremely schlocky, right? And I totally agree with that. I think that especially in American pop culture, horror tends to be, pardon the expression, folks, gore porn or splatterpunk or jump scare the movie. But there's, in terms of true terror, true that got down to my soul, that made me feel uncomfortable, that makes me feel vulnerable and victimized, but in a fun roller coaster kind of way. What do you find to be truly terrifying when you're reading, when you're watching a movie, when you're listening to audiobooks, any of that? What do you find to be truly horrifying, Mike?
There was a commercial once I saw where this guy was busting in his house, and the phone was ringing, and he's just throwing everything on the keys onto his armoire, and he's running past his dog and throwing his groceries down, and everybody thinks he's coming in for the phone, but he runs to the bathroom. And I find that terrifying, being without a bathroom when I need it.
That was well played. I did not see that one heading my way. That was pretty good. Mims, what about you?
IBS is the true thing. No, if I was to answer that question truthfully, which could probably stem from that, is not having control. Being in a situation where I don't have control. If there's a scary movie or something like that where somebody just really doesn't have control, it messes with me. Probably one of the first ones that really got to me was The Pit and Pendulum by Poe. The guy's trapped there, and that thing's swinging down, and the rats are on him, and I'm just you can't get out. That feeling of being trapped and not being able to, it just drives me nuts. I think of movies if you're, you see these things where the astronaut floats off, gets blasted away and is still alive, and I'm how long is his oxygen going to last? And he's just stuck in space and he can't do anything about it. He's going to die. The inevitable is going to happen. And the madness that's going to pursue in those moments before he dies, are they going to find peace, or are they just going to just completely lose it? And it goes into not just being able to move physically, but just the psychological aspect of not being able to get out of the situation that you're in. And that can be something even Willow's story where she's talking about the lady that's stuck under the bridge and that horrible life. That type of thing terrifies me.
I was just going to jump in and add, I've seen so many horror movies. It's just, I don't get scared by them often, but the ones that terrify me the most, are like Darkness Falls, where all the death scenes happen off screen and you just hear the sound.
Yeah.
My imagination just takes over at that point. Hitchcock, man, I love his stuff. It's terrifying. But again, you don't see a lot of the death scenes. It's sound and action and things that give that sequence. So, when you mentioned that story you wrote and all you see is the empty bed of the child at the bottom of the pit, Matt, you don't need any more than that. That just conveys enough. That's terrifying. That's one of my biggest fears is one of my children dying. And, you writing that, not putting it into words, but just doing that's enough to convey that message. So
Absolutely.
I don't think you need to have, the Saw version of a story. Those movies I hate because it's like, it's literally blood splattering and whatever. There's nothing for my imagination.
That's not terrifying. That's not scary to me. That's revolting.
Yeah.
And I think it's causing a reaction in me that I'm just like, oh, I flipped through channels once and came across a House of a Thousand Corpses, the Rob Zombie movie, and I watched an hour of that, and never again. No, I mean that's not my thing. I don't get into that at all. It's the letting my mind go and where it's almost like, hey, I'm terrified of the dark places my mind can take me. Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, what's that movie? Is it House on the Hill or something that has Liam Neeson and Catherine Zeta-Jones and Owen Wilson?
House on Haunted Hill.
Yeah.
House on Haunted Hill.
Yeah, House on Hill.
That one, there's not a lot of gore in there, but just seeing the terrified statues of the children's faces and then, the room changing and stuff like that is terrifying. I mean, I feel like that movie is more terrifying than anything just because of just the elements they used without using gore. They conveyed in a beautiful story that had you on edge, and you still at the end, it was kind of a redemption story at the two, because she ended up being there to protect the children and stuff. Go ahead, Krebs.
As a fellow horror fan, I'm with you on this one, Daniel. I have actually found in the last several years that horror movies, which I love, I adore them, they don't really scare me anymore, except with very rare exception. And I think that the secret sauce now, and we can talk about the psychology of the masses and all this stuff, but I think really the secret to terrifying someone is you have to unlock dread. Dread is the thing that terrifies people. You have to find what makes them dread the next outcome, and then you have to string that along as long as you reasonably can before you get to something more dreadful than what they thought. You have to, and there's always that high and that low, and that's a very common thing, especially in jump scares. Build all this anticipation, a little bit of music, and then there's a breath, and then there's quiet, and all of a sudden, and jump scares are so cheesy, but that formula works if you can do it with psychology as opposed to orchestra hits.
And I think coupled with that is the hope, is when you give people hope and then you take it away from them again.
Yeah.
Yes. In fact, actually, I think one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, I know we're talking about movies and we've got authors here.
Quiet Place again, aren't you?
No, although I do love A Quiet Place. I think A Quiet Place is brilliant and masterful and everyone should love it. But no, actually the scariest, one of the scariest movies I ever saw, it was back when Japanese and Korean psych horror was just hitting the American shores, and so you had The Ring, and I remember seeing The Ring. Yeah, The Ring messed me up, but then I saw The Grudge, and The Ring was nothing.
No,
The Grudge was way scarier.
I mean, all you hear is
that's all I hear when you do
the
it.
premise of The Grudge, the whole idea that something that is traumatic and awful can leave an imprint. That's what messed me up. I grew up in a haunted house.
Oh, so did I.
And it wasn't the imprint that was left wasn't dramatic or awful. It was just there was an old lady, and there was there was a built-in ironing board in the wall.
Oh.
And there's multiple times that we'd walk around the corner across the room. No one, I wouldn't even fall. We would just see her there ironing. Just for a split of a second, just see her there.
Oh my
And we knew that
gosh.
she'd done that enough that you'd see her. And that's the creepy thing, because we remodeled that house and that ironing board was gone. And where that ironing board was, there was a staircase. There was stairs there, and we'd still see her. Just
That is so
there.
cool, man. Oh my gosh.
No.
Dan Alton, that's a new episode right there. We have to
Yeah.
have real life ghost stories as an episode.
No, I mean, the house I grew up in, same thing. You know, my great grandmother was blind, and she actually died of a heart attack, massive heart attack in the house. And if we didn't put the dog dish in the spot it always was, you'd randomly hear the dog dish and the water bowl get kicked out, and it would be across the floor. You know, you'd hear people pacing up and down the hallway upstairs. I get it.
But that concept of something traumatic happening that causes a stain in the fabric of the world.
yes.
I mean, it's true. You go to battlefields, you go to places where horrible things have happened, and you still can feel it. It's something that goes against like nature, and it tears and it causes that. And the Grudge messed with me, because I was like, if it could become personified and turn into that,
Yeah. No, the Grudge totally messed me up. Finn Rizal, what's the thing that you find most terrifying in your horror media?
Well, I honestly believe that humans are the problem. I mean, like, out of all of the things and all of the universes, the bottom line is that the scariest thing is actually what people do to other people. And that's the legitimate, honest truth. So, like, we talk about Saw as being kind of torture porn, and it is, you know, but the idea that is behind that is very, very real. I cannot tell you how much I was affected by going to the Museum of Torture in San Francisco.
Oh,
That's downtown on the pier, if you've ever been down there.
Yep.
It's right next to the Wax Museum.
Yeah.
And they have all these real life torture implements, and they tell you exactly how they did all of these things. And it's just terrible. So I think that there are actually only two things that really terrify me. And one of them is that people are just, there is no end of the depth of depravity here on this plane of existence, which sucks. And that's kind of the way it's supposed to be, but it still is the worst. And the other thing is that because I have mental illness, I'm really terrified by things that make me question my reality. So psychological horror, slipstream horror, that kind of stuff is terrifying to me. And there's a couple of books that are really, really good. I read Mirror Mirror by Graham Masterson, which actually was like totally tripped me out. It was a very, very creepy story. About halfway through, I was just like, I don't think I could go to sleep. And then another really good one is House of Leaves by Danielewski. I can't remember his first name. But anyway, that book is ridiculous. Like, it is such a good book. It is brilliantly developed, and it is designed to literally break down the mind of the person reading it, which is just brilliant. Like, by the time you actually reach the end of that book, your brain is so soft that it is very difficult to really kind of capture your own grip on reality. I don't know. Like, it's really brilliant book. So all of my scariest ideas that are still to come are all based on this idea of undermining people's version of reality and making them question it.
that's brilliant.
I think
That's
it's
brilliant.
terrifying.
I better beta read it for you on that, Willow.
Yeah.
I already have enough doubts about that, so I don't need that anymore.
Just destroy people's realities.
Just so I know. We got to wrap it up. We could end up talking all night. This is fantastic. So guys, gals, people that are not humans, because apparently we're the problem. If you're listening to this episode through the airwaves, or if you're aliens out in the ether or out in the universe, and hey, jump on the internet and order this book. I mean, jump on the Kickstarter, be a contributing member to get a copy of the book, and get the pants scared off you. I mean, make it so that you have to walk from your living room to your bedroom with the lights on, because that's the only way to read a horror story, is to be scared.
Once again, that Kickstarter is Weird Little Worlds. You can find it on Kickstarter very easily with those 3 little words. I'd like to say a very special thank you to our guests, Mike Clough and Alora Dannon. You guys have been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Mad Mardigan. I really appreciate it.
Do you have more? I mean, is there more you can kick out before we?
Yes. The Fairy Queen is Shalendria. And even though it's the name of a city, there's a very beautifully feminine name for a city, Tirisleen.
Oh,
I would have leaned on that if I had to. If I had to, I would have put that one.
Naya, his wife.
I did call her Kaya earlier in the show.
Oh, Naya.
No, Kaya.
Yeah, Kaya. What?
Kaya.
Oh, and Mims.
I called you Mims earlier in the show.
Oh, you win.
I did. I called you Mims.
Okay, so you guys know, I don't know if you've been keeping track with the fact that Disney Plus is going to be doing another Willow.
I have indeed.
Have you seen who's going to be cast in it? Some of the people?
Not yet.
I know that. Yeah, I know Warwick Davis is coming back.
The actress that plays the lead Flag Smasher and Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
And Enfys Nest, she is going to be in that.
Oh, I'm in.
Man, she was in Solo, and now she's in.
Yeah, she was in Solo, and now she's Carly in Falcon Winter Soldier.
I'm really hoping that she's the daughter of Saoirse and Mad Mardigan.
I hope that too. I also hope that like all of these amazing actors and actresses just stay off of Twitter long enough to finish the show.
Yes.
Good golly. Yes. Oh, I can't take anymore.
But friends, even though we've got plenty more to talk about on that front, and I'm sure after the recording stops, we will have a few minutes of fun left.
Yes.
Nevertheless, there is an important question that we must pose to all of the dungeon crawlers out there.
Oh, yes, please do.
Third server. And dungeon crawlers, the question we want to ask to you is the most pertinent to this episode, which is, what is the thing that truly horrifies you? What is the thing that drives you to that edge? Let us know. Please keep it PG and kind to each other. Don't be mean, but by all sakes, have some good fun with us. Share some of your scary feelings, thoughts, experiences, fears, etc., and give us a chance to revel with you in the delights of being horrified.
Needles. It's just that. Needles.
Spiders made of needles.
Oh, yeah. Anyways, so with that said, folks, like we've already said multiple times, jump on the Kickstarter, help fund this, and stay tuned because next week we'll have author Tracy Hickman on the show to talk about Dragonlance. And with that said, we'll catch you next time.
And dungeon crawlers, whether it's a fairy tale or an amazing piece of horror, tell your story, whatever may come.
And it doesn't matter if you're a Daikini, an Nelwyn, excuse me, or a Brownie.
Yeah.
Be epic. Don't suck.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Dungeon crawlers.